Alright, this is April 29th, 2013, and this is Reality Supreme Being on the air again. Also known as HRM, Caesar St. Augustine de Buonaparte, Emperor of the United States of Turtle Island since 1996. My last two videos talked about Peyronie's disease and the possibility of examining why all the violent events are taking place, especially the ones that I've predicted. Now, I knew about mad cow disease for a long time. I mean, I saw all that stuff happening in the 1980s. Question is, a lot of you people don't know anything about the neurology of the brain. I mean, they can operate on you when they're trying to fix your brain with tumors or whatever, with just local anesthetic on the head, and open your brain up and touch certain spots and you react. Now, humans are much different than regular animals, just like dolphins or other higher intellectual forms. And dolphins are higher intellectual forms, trust me. But I wrote a bunch of stuff today, this morning, and I rethought all the stuff that I talked about in the last two videos about the reasons for many of these violent events that have been taking place. So I'm going to start now by most of these are just statements, 2 or 3 word statements, 4, sometimes 10, 11 word statements, and they tell me and stimulate my brain to go on and comment further, expand on it. Now, what are the causes of Parsons disease? I mean, not Parsons, Peyronie's disease. Pyrons are misshapen proteins with no genetic material. And why I have turned my attention at this time is because in the past, they didn't know enough. But this particular misshapen protein acts at a very molecular level, at the actually subatomic level. It's been studied at the molecular level, but not at the subatomic level, and on the quantum physics level. And that's where I come in. You've heard all my other videos, and a lot of you, I'm sure, thought, oh, this guy's ranting and raving, and he's pissed off because all his stuff got taken. It was. My life was interfered with. But there's a very great possibility that all of these negative events that took place to me are going to take place to you eventually. The longer the incubation period in certain mental diseases, the longer and more wasted away certain parts of the brain are. Why isn't the whole brain wasted? Why does it last so long? Because the brain is amazing. It has the ability to repair itself, even while you're sleeping. In one study, they added, and we're going to touch on this in a minute, Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and the connection to Scrapie, TMJ, CJD, TSE. Anyway, it doesn't matter. There's so many initials on all these different misshapen Peyronie proteins that it's unbelievable. Most people that aren't studied in it or haven't really examined it or actually been in the research area aren't really going to understand what I'm saying. So just click off and go someplace else and skip along until you realize that, hey, maybe you should have stuck your nose in a biology book and understood a little bit more about what's going on. So I'm just going to go on about the connection of iron. I told you about the book. Everything you know is wrong. Go buy it on my other 2 videos. Isolated behavior patterns is the first thing I thought of this morning. That means that a brain would only in certain areas diminish and only those areas be affected. This includes emotional behavioral patterns. You know, like Mr. McEwen in the book, who died of CJD. And it's in our animal life in the forest. Deers, elk. I mean, you know, you're going to get the whole picture as soon as I finish with this. So these isolated behavior patterns cause to trade off rationales, which means that whatever your brain thinks of logically It has to come, if someone poses you a problem, whether it's emotional, mathematical, whatever, by the way, you lose the capability to add mathematical problems when this disease gets worse. That's just one of the symptoms. If you've already had a math problem since you were a kid, don't worry, you don't have it. It's just that you have a problem with math problems. That's a DNA issue, okay? But, so 2 was trade-off rationales. It's kind of like a guerrilla warfare. Hit and miss. Hit, the pyron, the misshapen pyron eats and changes other good pyrons in your body and in your brain tissue and changes it to misshapen pyrons. How does it do that? Well, it's a complicated process. They're still investigating this. It's like touching someone and somebody says, "Ooh, you've given me cooties. Go get a bath. Go get cleaned up." Cooties, same thing. So pyrons pretty much touch your other good cooties in your brain, and misshapen the cooties turns it into the cootie of itself, not like a virus. So it's like a hit and miss. Hits a certain area of the brain. You may have certain emotional issues sometimes, and then sometimes you seem perfectly well, nothing's bothering you, you don't have any emotional issues at all. And then all of a sudden it comes back again. Now, many of this depends on outside environment, who you're married to, who you're having a relationship with, whether you have been attacked like I have and the city did this and that to me. We're getting to all this. So this hit and miss, sometimes it hits and misses and bingo, it doesn't miss. It actually hits, miss, bingo. And the emotional reaction is so great, it may cause you to, if you happen to own guns, may cause you to happen to think that you hate all of humanity and you're going to go out and solve it by shooting a bunch of people. 3, who can you trust anymore with this kind of disease? Because the rise of police brutality and abuse has been up. And the neglecting attitude of most politicians towards all of our problems, and many of our problems that should be addressed, especially civil rights issues, are also being neglected. Look at me, I'm a living example of it. So, because of the rise in police brutality and abuse, the worst case scenario is like Mr. What was his name? Can't call his name. It was just recently. I didn't take the trouble to really remember his name because of the fact that it was such a terrible thing that he was doing. The worst case scenario, using your sidearm for a pyron activated mass killing spree. And if this is something that doesn't just happen like that, it happens over a period of time while you're in connection with that, or if you're in a job occupation that happens to be that you need a sidearm. Soldiers, police, anybody that's given that kind of authority has to be checked psychologically repeatedly, more often now, because the incubation period for pyron disease is 30 to 40 years. They opened up Alzheimer's and dementia patients, like that book says, and they did find pyron in their brains. So Alzheimer's is possibly being, I say the word underlined, possibly being greatly contributed to this. When they fed a certain amino acid to people that were on Alzheimer's, they improved their social activities improved by 50%. That's because this particular amino acid helps repair DNA damage within 24 hours of contact of it. So and it also passes the blood-brain barrier. But I'm not going to mention what the amino acid is because you people don't deserve it. Go look for it. Now, 4. Nostradamus predicted that the world would become undone. And during this period, that the whole world would resort to cannibalism. Well, that's pretty much where they claim pyron disease started. They were feeding dead animals to live animals in their feed. Cows used to just graze on grass and natural oats and other things that people ate. We never had a problem in the Middle Ages. There was plague, yes, but that was from fleas. No, this is an entirely different disease of gigantic proportion, and the government's hiding it from you. 680 detention centers built on tax dollars to put you away when you start going crazy. When this thing comes full term and more people start showing up with these problems. That's also kind of pre-predicted in the movie Things to Come, where people, by H.G. Wells, novel, but it was made into a movie in the 1930s where people have this sleeping walking sickness and they're shot on sight because cooties. So anyway, that's the way the book story comes out. See the movie, you'll understand. In the Mayan population, isn't it interesting? And in the past, the Anasazi and the Mayan population, when they dig archaeological finds, they found that they were eating themselves. There was cannibalism. Might explain some of the craziness that was going on then, all the violence, that they literally became extinct because they themselves caused their own extinction by the cannibalism they were practicing. Much cannibalism, those while pyrons continue to mutate. So, with these mutations taking place, the human species tends to geometrically progress thoughts and accept and conclusions, a form of thought, mutating just like these pyrons mutate, which means when your thoughts continually progress towards the future, you think you're actually making some kind of progress, but in actual fact you're stacking one thought against another and coming up with certain conclusions that make sense to you, but they don't make sense to anybody else. Another pyrron activity, because it's affecting the brain, not all at once, but in bits and pieces. Different locations of the brain breed different results. Next thing, while human beings have brains, have the amazing ability to repair itself, in each generation there's only so much repair that can go on during these during these mutation events and as they continue. We can't possibly think right while continuing to harm and suppress our violent nature. So all of these things matter. Dead animals produce misshapen protons. Excuse me. Strike that. Dead animals produce misshapen prions, misshapen proteins, okay? Giving rise to a form of crystallization proteins that can't die. And once they're ingested, because they're already dead, because of quantum level life activity, meaning nothing that already exists can either be destroyed or created. A lot of scientists know this. It's all simply continues to change shape, which is mutation throughout the whole universe. Remember what I said in one of my other videos. Everything on Earth is one, and in the whole universe, is one item taking materials from another, death to the other, in order to continue to change or survive. Applying to the life forms as we know them, that one thing kills another or changes the shape of another in order to protect its own symmetry until its own symmetry is changed by its own death. Everybody knows that you're going to die anyway, or you should know. So, if that's so, why worry about the pyrons or any gigantic blunders that the human species continues to make? Just live your life out until you start wasting away or some other accident or thing kills you. It's all part of life. But the only thing about all this stuff is that there are interruptions in lifestyles that are all too early destructive by someone else's interference using the color of law to destroy anyone's life. And that's what my videos all talk about. So where's all this behavior coming from? Excuse me, I got to check how much time I got left. Oh, that's good. It's only 14 minutes. So I know that as I read it, many of you may not be able to understand, but you'll have to just, rerun the tape. You can do that on YouTube. You just take the little ball and run it back to where you thought I said was important to you, and that's all you need to listen to. You don't need to listen to my rants and raves, except that I've said throughout all my videos, there are people that are able to predict the future, and I am predicting the future in every one of my videos because everyone has the capability to predict futures. Just in their everyday lifestyle, living, talking, writing something down that just comes to your head all of a sudden. It doesn't come to your head all of a sudden. It doesn't pop up out of your own DNA. Part of it pops out of your own DNA, but not all of it. And other parts of it come from outside environment, kind of like the 99th monkey philosophy. I'm talking on the quantum level right now. So this guy Dahmer, oh, I just remembered his name, killed all these people. Police officer, using his authority status and all of his training to commit whatever they claim he committed, because he was never charged, he was never brought to trial, no one witnessed him killing someone, and even if they did, the guy still deserved a trial. So where is all this going? Like Nostradamus said, the world will become undone on its own doing. It'll become so undone that people will resort to cannibalism. Remember, if pyrons are a main disease, the cattle industry will fall on its own. No more eating goat stuff. No more eating from animals. No more. This goes back to the Old Testament. I can open up the Old Testament. I don't have it. Do I have the Old Testament here? No. In one of the first books of Moses, in Leviticus, supposedly God gives instructions to Moses that the Jewish people are not to mix blood with meat. They have to drain the blood. There are certain unbelievably taboo things, not eating the animal with a cloven foot and so on. Now, I know that I'm mixing a lot of subjects all together, and you're going to have to rearrange them in your own way. And the way I talk is in puzzles. And the reason I talk in puzzles is not because there's something wrong with me. It's because there's something wrong with the rest of you. I've already reached enlightenment. I found out a long time ago what it really is all about. And sadly, no one's going to believe me. Actually, I kind of like that, because can you imagine what would happen in my life if everybody believed me all of a sudden? Oh my God, I'd never have any peace of mind. They'd be on my rump everywhere I walk. I couldn't walk out in public without hiding my face behind a mask or something. I mean, it'd be worse than being a movie star. Can you imagine if I really was some fantastic person that all of a sudden became enlightened and everybody knew it? I'd never hear the end of it. I'd probably be like Moses. I said, I got to go off and die on my own. I'm not allowed into the land of milk and honey. And that's my idea. Moses finally got tired of the people bugging him to say, show us another miracle. You're the only contact to God. Show us another miracle, another miracle. Moses just finally thought in his own head, I need a break. So he took off, died someplace peacefully, all by himself. Maybe he didn't die. Maybe he was picked up by a UFO. Who knows? I mean, there's more than 6 billion people on the planet, more than 6 billion brains, all learning different forms of information and putting their own puzzles together on YouTube and talking, and all it really boils down to is, how much money can I make off of this? So I can, what did I say in my paper? To protect its own cemetery until its own cemetery is changed by its own death. When you die, you don't need the money, you don't even need your body anymore. You're gone. So I know I've made up a lot of new scientific terms like isolated behavior patterns. That deals with certain parts of the brain being eaten away and causing certain behavior patterns that would migrate or evolve towards what you call either a very good conclusion or a very bad conclusion. Bad conclusion being like the police officer who was pissed off, or Holmes who shut up the people in the theater because people say all the time there's all kinds of crisscross information. So you're filling the poor brain with all this information while it's getting eaten away by pyron activity, which is happening anyway to everybody. And also, even if it wasn't, your aging brain also is affected. So eating dead things on the quantum level aren't really dead. Those cows in the feed aren't dead. Their atoms and their subatomic particles are still alive, meaning not alive in the sense as we know it while we're alive. Something happens when a person dies to their body.